What if I were to tell you that your Netflix binging habit is causing a global economic meltdown? Stranger Things, Squid Games, heck, even my favorite K-dramas, Crash Landing on You, all seem very harmless. But here's the catcher. Netflix and other streaming platforms are one of the largest causes of what's driving Trump's tariffs. One minute you're sitting binging Squid Games, the next minute you are paying $100 for an avocado. That is simply because of tariffs. The big question is, what is the linkage between binging Netflix and the massive tariffs that are causing an economic meltdown? This one's exciting because I'm going to take you behind the scenes of what Netflix, the government, and other business folks don't want you to know. We are going to unpack what it means to drive the decision of imposing a tariff, all through a very seamless activity of Netflix. So let's watch this film together and try to unpack what is happening in the world of economic and geopolitical turmoil, and why is it that Squid Games and my favorite K-dramas is responsible for it all. On April 4th, 2025, Trump shocked the world. He imposed a 34% tariff on Chinese goods. Now, you're probably asking, tariffs, what the heck is that? You see it all over the news. You see it on social media. Your parents, your grandparents, they're all worried about it. Everyone's trying to understand what the world of tariffs means and what is it doing to your dollars. But let's start fundamentally. What is a tariff? A tariff is essentially a tax on any good that is imported into a country. So if we bring something from a different country and it lands in U.S. soil, we hit that good and whoever sent it with a X% tariff. And in this case, Trump imposed a 34% tariff on goods coming from China. And on April 9th, there is an estimated $500 billion plus worth of goods that are going to be hit with these tariffs. And to further emphasize this point of a tariff, let's take a look at this visual. This shows products being made in a different country, being shipped overseas and landing at a U.S. dock. And that process of it going from origination to destination. In the middle, it is hit with a tariff. And what happens is, typically, electronics, cars, food, etc., a lot of that is imported. And the price that you paid today for something versus the price you're going to pay tomorrow post-tariff is typically going to be a bit more expensive. That's why a lot of folks say when people are hit with tariffs and countries are hit with tariffs, the US or whoever is imposing those tariffs, the consumer ends up actually biting that bullet and paying for that tariff. And I dive into strategies of how you can protect your wallet and your investments from tariffs later on in this video, so stick towards the end for that. But for right now, I just want you to understand this. Starts from point A, China, to point B, destination, United States. And in the interim, there's a little thing called tariffs. And to emphasize this point of a tariff, let's pick one good, for example, electronics. 80% of electronics originate in Asia, surprisingly. I'm guarantee you, if you look at the back of your TV or your phone or tablet, odds are some piece or the whole component will say it was made and manufactured in China. And for our tariff administration, that product was made in Asia. And let's pick China, for example. It was made there, manufactured there in the factories, the pieces were put together, it was on a supply chain. The whole value chain of producing this piece of good was in China. And what China does is their customers are mainly foreign buyers, meaning places like Europe and the United States. So China produces these goods, puts it in boxes and pallets, ships it overseas, and it lands at a US dock. Now, when it lands at a US dock, it is hit with now a 34% tariff. So that before we can even enter this country, whoever made it is going to have to pay a 34% tax. Now, whoever made it, do they want to eat that 34% tax? No, not really. So they're going to raise the price of it so that the US buyer has to purchase it for 34% more, and then the US purchaser, typically retail chains, Amazon, folks like that, have to pass through that price to underlying consumers. Boom! That's a tariff and its economic impact on you. So that Samsung TV, which used to cost $1,000, is now going to be 34% more expensive. So now it's going to be $1,340, all because of a tariff. Now that math is not exact and the numbers aren't exact, but that's just an illustration of how the flow of trade and the overall impact on pricing works. But why the heck is this stuff made overseas anyway? Why don't we just make everything in the United States? We have the space, we have the labor, like why? Well, the first thing is overseas manufacturing has two clear benefits. One, lower costs, but then two, economies of scale. There are entire cities and trades and businesses in Asia, specifically China, that specialize in producing these different pieces of equipment for electronics, cars, etc. They specialize in doing that at massive scale. For us to replicate that production ability, production capacity, and cost effectiveness in the United States will take years, and it is pretty darn expensive. And if you're a business owner, the key thing if you're a business owner is you want to have the lowest cost basis because you want to protect your margins. And to have your lowest cost basis, you might as well outsource production and manufacturing in places that are cheap and know what they're doing, aka making electronics in China. But why do these manufacturers in China want to build this stuff in the first place? Well, simply demand. Demand drives it all. There would not be factories in China, in Vietnam, in India, and other low-cost places of production if there wasn't a very clear and evident demand for their product or service. And who is that demand? Hate to break it to you, but it's you. Think of the amount of times that you go into electronic stores or department stores and purchase goods that were made in China. Think about the craziness of big sales like Cyber Monday or trampling over folks in Black Friday. You are very, very responsible for increased demand for these products. In 2024, there was an estimated $490 billion of electronics imported into the United States. And to get below the surface, and we're going to do second and third level thinking here, I want you to bring it back to the original question. What does Netflix have to do with this? And I think Netflix is the key driver for electronic production demand. You may think this is simply Netflix and chill. No. This is Netflix and chaos.
Said I played these games before.
When I tell you, when Trump imposed these tariffs on April 4th and April 5th, the stock market, S&P 500, fell 5% each that day. That is hundreds of billions of dollars of market value wiped. And if you sold, you're really sold. You should never sell during a downturn like this. Matter of fact, buy more. That's a smart money tip. Let's unpack Netflix for a minute. Why is Netflix such a massive platform? Like, look at these stats. It is estimated that there is almost 247 million hours watched daily on Netflix. That is 1 billion hours every 4 days. With a B. Now, how are you watching Netflix? Odds are you are most likely watching it on a TV or a tablet or a smartphone, heck, maybe even an Apple Vision Pro or one of the Meta ones, right? But you're watching it on some form of an electronic device. And what's nuts is in 2024, it said that estimated 90% of homes in the US have a streaming device or electronic that they use to stream Netflix. But the big question is, where the heck did those devices come from? It didn't come from your local produced electronic manufacturer here in Laguna, California. No. It came from China. As a matter of fact, in the world, 70% of the TVs in the world come from China. 85% of the world's smartphones were manufactured in China. You see how this is all tying together here? This is bigger than you think. So all of these devices that we have in our homes, in our rooms, in our drawers, they all mostly start in one central place. China. And this is what gets under Trump's skin, our over-reliance on a foreign country for a key product or service. And he thinks if we're producing all this stuff overseas and bringing it in, we are killing U.S. jobs. But I'd like to argue that our manufacturing breadth of industries isn't there yet to make these products at scale at a cost-efficient manner for U.S. businesses. Not yet. I guarantee you, if we moved all of our electronic production in the United States, our TVs would be 3 to 4x the price. So what do? He zeroed in, he hit them where it hurts, aka their pockets, and he imposed a 34% on Chinese goods. And funny enough, some of the tariff language actually calls out specifically electronics. So what's the current context of this? Like why does this matter today? It matters today because this trend of demand for electronics that are produced overseas and the demand being stemmed from me and you just like binging Kaisanat on Twitch, right? I don't see that stopping anytime soon. Like, take a look at these charts. Streaming across Netflix, Twitch, heck, YouTube, those are going through the roof. We are not going to stop consuming pieces of content online on a smart device or electronic or TV anytime soon. So this over-reliance on China for electronics specifically, I think is kind of here to stay. And people are buying more and more devices. Like 500 billion of electronics are estimated to be imported into this country just this year alone. But FYI, Netflix isn't the only platform to blame here. There's other platforms that are growing too, like Hulu, Disney+, Paramount, and also YouTube. Like, check this out. YouTube's growth has been going through the roof, with an estimated 500 million hours watched every single day. And I'd argue that the new king of content is actually starting to become YouTube. And let's dive into YouTube for a second. This is super cool. They give me analytics of like how you guys are watching my stuff. And it showed that 60% of you are watching it on TVs. 24% are watching it on mobile phones. 13% are watching it on a computer, surprising, but only 3% are watching it on a tablet. Get your iPads up, all right, guys? But that's just cool to see that all of those are devices that are imported, okay? And I'd like to thank you also for watching my channel. They also gave me like a weird stat that showed percent of you that aren't subbed to my channel but are watching my videos. And 95% of you guys are watching without subbing. So if you do yourself a really big favor, is subscribe to the channel down below so you don't miss a beat when it comes to these smart money moves. It means the world to me as well as the rest of the community. So thank you. But back to this demand question, this stuff is not stopping. Like, our brains and lives need content. Like, the dopamine hit we get from watching something incredible or laughing on TikTok or consuming content that just makes us feel good is going through the roof, in fact, soaring. And what that means is the reliance on a third-party country like China to produce electronics that we can watch all of these things on is not going to stop anytime soon. So what's next? Can we fix this at all? Is there any reversing it? And what's the smart money play here? Because I'm telling you now, if this trend keeps up and tariffs keep coming, your goods, aka electronics, are going to become more expensive. The smart money play. You are trying to protect your dollars from rising prices caused from inflation. And like I mentioned earlier, a good coming from a different country to hit the US soil is going to be hit with that 34% tariff, for example. So if a good is priced at $100, say some cool Travis Scott Jordan 1s, if those shoes originally were $100 before all this tariff nonsense kicked off, it is going to be $134. So how can you protect yourself from having a 34% increase in the cost of something that you would normally purchase? And also, by the way, it isn't just electronics and shoes. We have large machinery, we have cars, we have avocados, we have beer that are imported from essential trade partners like China, Canada, Mexico, etc. So more than half of everyday goods that you are used to consuming will eventually have a trickle-down effect and have an increase in pricing if tariffs keep going in the direction that they are going. So what's the smart money play? What would I do? Buy used. Buying things used, buying things on Facebook Marketplace, borrowing something or buying something from a friend, or going to your local flea market or secondhand goods place. That right there is one of the best ways that you can avoid paying increased prices driven from tariffs, largely because these products are already here in this country. So the fees and taxes on that product being imported have already been paid, and simply you can buy it at its regular gross value. And odds are at a discount because it's used. So you can start going to your local Goodwill to buy different clothes or pieces of home goods. You can start going to Best Buy and getting open box products, little things like that that you can get used. Now, your avocados and your beers, you can't get those used. You're kind of just stuck with having to pay that increased price due to tariffs. But other things you can definitely buy used or secondhand. Now, for your portfolio, there are a bunch of other strategies like investing in international emerging markets or different ETFs that have a global exposure instead of one specific country exposure. We can talk about that another day. But largely for protecting your wallet from inflation due to this, I think just buying used is one of the best ways that you could go. So are you in trouble for causing this trade war? Kinda. But we all are, right? Because streaming is a globally universal, harmless activity that we just naturally need to do and consume as humans. No, we don't need to, but it's just embedded in our everyday lives. And that hobby is not going anywhere. So I don't see this changing anytime soon. But hopefully now you're a little bit more aware of the economics and the flow of a supply chain behind that behavior to showcase how a simple, mindless act of watching anime on Netflix could lead to a 34% tax on electronics from China. It's kind of crazy, but it's true. Now, our clever strategy of buying used and secondhand items to protect our wallets from these tariffs is just one of the many different strategies that we can use to just get through this storm of tariff nonsense. If you want to unpack the other strategies that I think are pretty cool smart money moves, you should check out this next video where I outline exactly what tariffs mean for almost every single good in your home, as well as the strategies to protect your wallets from these rising costs. So check that out. And if you guys enjoyed this video, smash that like button. It means the world to me and the channel. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.